Today, I want to talk about voice and what happens when you lose your voice in your manuscript, how to keep from losing your voice in your manuscript, and a little bit about the difference between taking edits and giving away your voice. I've got some questions from newish authors that feel like their voice may have been polished out of the manuscript. So let's talk about how to find your voice and how to keep your voice. Hey there, welcome back to the channel. I'm John Hartness. I'm the founder and publisher of Falstaff Books, as well as the author of multiple series, including the Black Knight Chronicles, Bubba the Monster Hunter, Quincy Harker Demon Hunter, and a pile of other books. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm glad to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to talk about voice. But before I can really talk about it, I need to make sure you know what I'm talking about. What is voice when we're talking about a writer? Voice is that sometimes indefinable it factor in a writer's work. It's that thing that makes your book uniquely yours, that turns a story from just a book into your book. Voice is an Eric Clapton guitar solo. It's a Jerry Douglas dobro lick. It's a Sam Bush mandolin part. It's that thing that lets me, even if your name isn't anywhere on the cover or the spine, if I read a section of the book, I can tell it's yours. It's a unique collection of word choice, punctuation, sentence styling, and story creation that may not be perfect, but it is distinct and it is yours. Voice is one of, if not the most important things a writer can develop, and one of the most crucial things to protect. I just did a quick read on a project for a friend who was concerned that their editor was trying to change their voice. They wanted me to look over the book and give them some quick comments to see if my opinion jibed with their editors. So I read the book, which is very much in their voice, and I gave my feedback. I don't know exactly what the editor said, so I don't know if they were trying to change the voice or not. But before we talk about protecting the voice, it's at least as important to understand what voice is not, in addition to understanding what voice is. Voice is not an excuse to use crap grammar or indecipherable prose. If your readers can't follow the plot, if they lose track of what characters are talking, they can't tell who's doing what, or they get bored by excessive repetition, that's not your distinct voice. That is lack of skill and poor craft. Voice is not a catch-all term for the way you write. If you tend to have overly complex plots that are almost impossible to navigate, that's not voice. That's structure. If you tend to have very elaborately designed magic systems within your books, that's not voice. That's a characteristic of your setting. That's world building. Voice is not an excuse for writing in a white box and never describing anyone, any place, or anything. It's not an out that you use to cover the weaknesses in your writing. So you don't get to just reject all editorial notes with, that's my voice. It may not have a damn thing to do with your voice. That might be your ego. If you're actually doing things that harm the story, that ain't voice. Voice is what takes a solid story, a solidly crafted book, and elevates it into a unique work. So that's what voice is and what voice isn't. Now let's get into some questions. Questions. How can I identify my voice in my book? Okay, that's a good one, because not every piece of your book is going to be unique. Sometimes you're going to describe a setting or an action in the same way 1,000 people do, because there are only so many ways to say he walked up and shot the dude in the head with a pistol. There are only so many ways to phrase that. But there will be parts of your book that sound like no one else you've ever read before, or sound so much like something that would come out of your mouth that it couldn't possibly be written by someone else. Maybe there's a specific turn of phrase that you use, or a specific way that you tend to describe characters, or just a way that you build a plot element. When you're starting out, a lot of your book will sound like other people you read, but the parts that are uniquely you is where your voice lives. When I first started publishing, a lot of my work sounded like Jim Butcher and Kim Harrison. I was reading a lot of their work at the time, and since I was also writing first-person urban fantasy, and I'm also snarky and full of pop culture references, I sounded a lot like them because we had similar characteristics from the Hollow series to the Dresden Files to the Black Knight Chronicles. Obviously, those series and those books are very different, but there's a very similar voice to all of them. As I went on making books, however, my voice emerged from the shadows more with each subsequent book until nowadays I don't really sound much like those writers at all. So the way you find your voice is writing more and reading more, but we'll get to that in a second. Question dos. I'm trying to find my voice, but I feel like I'm leaning into voices that I've read in other books. Should I stop reading other authors' work while I'm writing so I avoid contaminating my work with the voice of others? No. Let me elaborate. No. You should read more and write more to lock your voice in stone and build a better basis for comparison to other works. You need to read, and you need to read contemporary work in the genre you want to write in. And before you hop in the comments to tell me how so much contemporary published fiction is crap and the stuff you write and the stuff you read 20 or 30 years ago was so much better, take a breath. Did you take a breath? Now, say that out loud before you type it. Now, listen closely to what you just said. Say it again if you need to. Does that person sound like a pompous douche? If that person sounds like a pompous douche, then maybe don't bother writing it, because it's in public. It's on the internet. People are going to see it when you're being a pompous douche. So maybe don't. You will build your narrative voice on the backs of the people that you read, but that doesn't mean you're mimicking them or you're ripping them off. Every writer has influences, and those influences usually show up in our work if our readers are familiar with the stuff that we love to read as well. You don't need to be afraid of that. And the more broadly you read, the more influences you will have, and the broader a pool of writers you will draw from, and that will create this brand new crazy quilt of influences that will help contribute to your truly unique voice. So no, don't stop reading because you're afraid of contaminating your voice. Your voice is already contaminated. Every piece of culture you've consumed in your life has gone to building your narrative voice, either in the affirmative or the negative. Sometimes you read something like, ugh, I hate that. Well, then you probably won't write like that because you hate it. So good on you. Don't write like stuff you don't like. But you have to read a lot to know what you don't like. I've read advice, number 3, that says I should do writing exercises while trying to mimic the writing of other writers to learn what voice is while I work on finding my own. Should I try to stop myself from sounding like other authors or adapt it to a version of my voice? I think neither, actually. I do think that there's value in trying to write like other writers whose work you enjoy as an exercise, but I think you are better served by writing a chapter like one of your influences, then examining it closely to find the places where you fail at mimicry. Because the places where the story can't be twisted to sound like someone else is writing it, those are the parts where your voice is inescapable. And studying those moments in your work will help make your own voice be more familiar and more comfortable to write in. So, yeah, maybe write like Jim Butcher, like Mercedes Lackey, like Jonathan Mayberry, like Stephen Graham Jones, like Gabino Iglesias, like Maurice Broaddus. But then go back to those sections where you tried to write like those people and see where you can't. The parts that you can't bury in mimicry, that's you. That's what's living, breathing you. Number 4, I've edited my book so much that now it feels stale. Have I polished the voice out of the book? What should I do to get it back? First, take a break. Honestly, a ton of writing questions can be answered and problem solved with that piece of advice. Put it down. Step away from the keyboard or the notebook or the dictation machine or however the hell you revise. Everybody seems to be in a massive hurry today to get their book out and in the hands of readers. And I get it. You're excited. But to truly polish your book, you have to have perspective. And you get perspective with distance. When you're eyeballs deep in a book and have been for weeks, months, years, you can't tell what needs to be tweaked because you're too close to it. You literally can't see the forest for the trees. Because if you're standing in front of a tree, you can't see the forest. Peekaboo. Really, set the book aside for a month, at least. At least. More if you can stand it. Let it percolate and let yourself forget what it felt like to be up to here in this book every single day. Then, when you have forgotten major parts of what you've written, go back and look at it with fresh eyes. Find the parts of the book that you still love, that still make your blackened, shriveled little heart sing. And then go look at the parts that fall flat to you. What's the difference? What in your writing is great about the great bits and crap about the crap bits. Take the parts that feel good, break them down to their components, and then jam that same sauce into the flat parts. Then you'll be back to having a vibrant book that only you can write. I was so close to just saying only you can prevent forest fires, but somehow I managed. No, I guess I did go ahead and say it. Oops. This stuff takes time. It's not a fast process. Revising the book often takes longer than writing it in the first place. It's one of the reasons publishing is often a very slow process. But there will still be readers when you're done. And it takes time to make something really, really good. So step away from the book. Work on something completely different. Not the sequel. Work on something completely different. Work on a screenplay. Work on poetry. Do something wild, outrageous. Write a comic book script. Don't write anything. Start a YouTube channel. Don't start a YouTube channel. Start a YouTube channel. Do what you want. But at least a month. 5. What's your top tip for editing my book so that I don't erase my narrative voice? This is a variation on something that Rick Gualtieri and I talked about a long time ago, and it's a rule Rick has for himself that he's talked about publicly, so it's not like I'm giving away trade secrets. Not that there are that many secrets in this trade. Sit your ass down and write the book, and you'll be ahead of 80% of people who say they want to write a book. Rick's rule for comedy is if it makes him laugh after three drafts, it stays in no matter what anybody says. This is the same thing for how to make sure you're not polishing the voice out of your book. Don't get rid of anything that makes you feel something. If it makes you laugh, it stays in. If it makes you gasp, or if it makes you cry, if it evoked a real emotion in you, it will almost certainly resonate and do the same with your readers, so those bits stay in. 6. I had to think far too much about how many fingers that needed, so cut a brother a little slack. I had an editor go through my book, and I feel as if some of the changes don't sound like me anymore. Should I follow their advice since they are the expert, or keep the original content? This is a tough one, kids. It really is. And the answer is going to be different whether you are self-publishing or working with a press. Because if you're working with a press, you got to pick the hills you're willing to die on. Because, hey, might be a hill somebody's going to die on. So let's first look at it from the perspective of working with a publisher. And I'll speak specifically for how we work, which may not apply to all presses, but is probably going to be fairly close. In our house editorial guide, we have a hierarchy of what beats what when it comes to edits. Chicago Manual of Style trumps your high school or college grammar class. Our house style guide trumps CMOS, Chicago Manual of Style. Author's narrative voice trumps our house style. I trump all of those because I'm the boss and I write the checks. We are this summer re-releasing, actually not re-releasing because it's the first time this book has been published in the US. We are releasing H.A. Hartley's ghost story called Cold Bath Street. This is a very personal book for AJ because it is set in the town that he grew up in. And a lot of the places that are mentioned in the book are places that he knows in real life. And a lot of the chapter headers in the book are photos of places that he knew in his childhood. So this book means a lot, and it's very personal. Now, we are a US-based publisher. That means that typically when AJ, who is British by nature, not naughty by nature, he's very well behaved, but he's British. So usually when we're doing an AJ book, he has to cut out all of the extraneous U's, and he has to get rid of the majority of the Britishisms in his writing. We didn't do that in this case because the book is set in England, AJ is from England, and the book has a very British feel and vibe to it. So having color spelled with a U just added texture to that. That is nowhere in any of our style guides. Our house CMOS tells you get rid of the extra U's. Our house style guide agrees with CMOS. AJ and I had a pint and we talked about it, and I said, I think we want to keep all the extra U's. He was happy because he didn't have to go back through and cut them out because the book was originally published in the UK. But I think that it adds texture and flavor to the book to keep those in there. And I am the final arbiter of the style guide for Falstaff books. If he'd pushed back, I would have said, okay, sure, whatever, you can Americanize it if you want. But it didn't serve the book. So we frequently have these discussions, authors, editors, and myself, about different books. Maybe there's a term that I don't care for, but it's a quote, not just dialogue in the book, but the author is quoting a situation that happened in their real life, and some unacceptable terms were used in that encounter, and it really added color to the setting. Okay. Sometimes, like, nah, I don't think we need that. And the author's like, okay. But that's not changing voice. That adding the extra U's or cutting the extra U's, it would have changed the voice, and it would have made Cold Bath Street feel a little like a different book. But its voice is messy. Sometimes, usually. A lot of times voice is run-on sentences or meandering around the point to get your message across in a certain style. It's sometimes not grammatically correct or even correct for the period. Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames is a fantasy book that I really, really loved. And I took some of the dialogue stylings in Unforgiven, and I used Kings of the Wild as inspiration for how I patterned some of the dialogue in Unforgiven, because I really love that book, and it's very anachronistic. Kings of the Wild and Unforgiven, they're basically traditional white guy, Eurocentric high fantasies. Except we both use contemporary language. Eames does a lot more with shifting anachronistic concepts into the world than I do. But it works for the voice in that book. The key is that it serves the book. It's got to serve the book. The book does not serve your narrative voice. Your voice must serve the book. Because you don't want to make the book serve your ego. That's not what it's about. It's not about giving you pride in yourself. That's not what publishing is here for. Publishing is, it's also not here to beat you down and make you miserable, although you might think that every so often when you're in the trenches. But you make your choices to serve the book, not to serve your ego. Because that means you're burying your ego to make the end product as good as humanly possible. And that's what you and your editors are trying to do. Because that's something that you got to keep in mind is your editor doesn't want to change your voice willy-nilly. If your editor on the text is your acquiring editor, well, they acquired it for a reason. If they're not, then they're working for the person who acquired your book, and they've been told that the book was acquired for a reason. Don't screw it up. But another important thing to keep in mind is that an editor's suggestions are just that, suggestions. Now, I've got a stack of books right here. You know what you don't see on the spine of any of those books? You don't see the editor's name. My name is not on the spine of any books that I have edited, except anthologies, but that's different. My name is on the spine and the cover of the stuff I wrote. And that's where yours will be. That means that at the end of the day, it is your choice. So the editor is not changing your book. They are not making changes willy-nilly and then publishing the book without your knowledge. Not if they are in any way ethical. Yes, I know it happens. You don't ever have to work with those people again. And you shouldn't. But if you have a bunch of changes that you think are designed for what that editor thinks is the good of the book, but you think that it's going to change your voice, do what my friend did. Find a trusted friend who's written multiple books to look over the project and give you their opinion. You can check with a mentor or a critique partner or a local writers group for their feedback. It's important when you get editorial feedback you don't agree with, and trust me, we all sometimes get editorial feedback that we do not agree with, but it's important to check your ego. Because sometimes, even if it is a matter of voice, your editor might be right. But get a third opinion before you go to war over it. You got your opinion, you got the editor's opinion, you've got some trusted third party's opinion. Make sure you've got all of those before you roll up your sleeves and get to fight. Voice is what separates good books from great books. It's what separates good writers from fantastic writers. One of the first times I really understood this was in Jim Butcher's work. I have always been a big Dresden Files fan. I've enjoyed those books for many years, continue to enjoy them. When I first started reading the Codex Alera books, I was blown away. Not because the stories were the best thing I've ever read. They're very good. But because they seemed almost like they were written by a different person. Jim adopted such a different narrative voice that I was absolutely stunned that the same guy who wrote Harry Dresden wrote these books. That's some real skill. I've managed it fairly well once. My book, Amazing Grace, is nothing like anything else I've ever written. It's a female protagonist. I've done a couple of those, but this one's a female protagonist, middle-aged female protagonist, and it's first person too. So it feels nothing like anything else I've ever written, and I'm very proud of that book because it is such a distinctive voice, but it's not my natural writing voice, and it was a challenge to put that on every day when I was writing it. So when you find your voice and as you develop your voice, please understand that the work is just beginning, because you will continue to refine that voice for your entire career. You will adapt that voice to changes in the industry, to changes in the way books are written and read. So you don't just learn your voice once. You create and develop your voice, and you keep developing it for your entire career. John Scalzi's first book reads very differently from John Scalzi's 20 whateverth book or 30 whateverth book. Jonathan Mayberry's first book reads very different than the most recent Joe Ledger book, because we are all continuing to grow as writers with every single book, and you will too. So yeah, you want to find your voice and you want to lock it in as much as possible, but as a writer, you're not a Pokemon. You're not going to get to your final form. Well, I mean, eventually you will, but then you're dead. So hope that's not going to happen for a long time for any of you. Certainly hope it's not going to happen for a long time for me. So as you're working on your voice, don't get so frozen in this is how I have to write forever. Because no, it's a natural thing for your voice to develop and shift over time. Let it. Now, what do you want to know about voice? Leave a question in the comments, and if I get enough cool questions, I'll do another video on voice where I answer your questions. Also, you can just leave questions in the comments about other publishing things, and maybe I'll make a video on those. But to do that, it works better if you like and subscribe. Sure, ring the bell to get notified if you want to. And if you want your name up on the wall like these awesome people, then after you've subscribed, you can click that little button and become a member. You'll get info on our Discord, and you'll get our videos a little bit early. So I hope to see you on the Discord. I hope to see you at a convention sometime soon. Till next time, bye.